Sacrificed, I have paid my life, I have paid my age there. And finally, you should remember that we are better off. We are alive. We have left so many friends behind. So, I'm responsible.
I'm Fashih. تسوي أملا. رلا. عشرة شيء زخون تسان كيلو ملا. رلا. إذا ما يعني بارنس فتوى بارنس سنتاي سنسناي. بريس أملاك بارية فتوى. سنسنت بحبوتاتنا أنا حتى ساعد بارنس حتى نبري. سلزم بتنا جبانو. أما تاكل. هاي. إذا برهان لون مش بتنا ريالنا مز. أبي ركنا هنا.
The men we are about to meet have just seen the last shots fired in a war that had been going on for 30 years. Trapped between hope and desperation, day by day they fought their way through battle after battle to achieve their special destiny. The story of Eritrea's struggle for freedom, little known to the outside world, is marked by events that were unforeseen not only by the other countries involved, but also by the participants themselves. It is the emblematic history of a people who, alone in their struggle, have fought for and won their identity, freedom, and unity.
أخوة عرضنا ولا بلادنا مع بعض.
نحن نزيارنا مسؤولين. وتوم دكنا ميتومسي ناس إننا زرخبنا نعمل خمس جانا خمينا.
April 25th, 1993. The people of Eritrea vote for the first time in their lives and in the country's history. The war had come to an end 2 years previously. They are voting for independence won by force of arms. And this referendum will sanction their victory in the eyes of the rest of the world.
Ho pensato che la mia nascita è quel giorno e anni passati tutti da dimenticare. Solo non posso diventarmi un bambino, ma io non ho età, tutto quell'anno che è passato non si chiama la vita. La conclusione è ieri, da quando è andata su la bandiera assicurata il mio governo eritreo, non pensavo nemmeno di miei figli che sono morti, c'è nome mio preciso eritreo e sono felicissimo.
Eritrea is a country where Christians and Muslims live side by side, where 10 different languages are spoken. Today, Eritrea has become the 182nd country to be admitted to the United Nations. Its flag, flying proudly outside the UN building in New York, marks the end of a saga and the birth of a nation. Eritrea was created by Italy. Towards the end of the last century, the Italians set up a colony in a mountainous region on the African coast of the Red Sea, an area steeped in history, and according to local tradition, still inhabited by the descendants of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. During the Second World War, the British took over from the Italians, and shortly afterwards the area was annexed by Ethiopia. But at a certain moment, the inhabitants, who no one had consulted up till then, refused to go on being the victims of their own history. They didn't want to be natives any longer. They wanted to be Eritreans. Thus began an interminable war. This is their account, handed down from father to son, of what took place.
Siccome era una colonizzazione, un'occupazione italiana dell'Eritrea, erano considerati come secondi cittadini indigeni. Le scuole fino alla quarta classe, più di quello non c'era l'insegnamento del governo italiano. Ognuno studiava per conto suo, leggendo dei libri. Solo dopo l'occupazione inglese, militare, allora abbiamo un po' migliorato l'educazione.
Che era la natura dei vostri rapporti con gli italiani?
Beh, nei limiti di secondo cittadini, di indigeni, di colonizzati, non c'erano tanti cattivi rapporti. Solo c'era dei sentimenti perché l'Italia non insegnava come insegnava gli altri italiani.
Italy invested heavily in the Eritrean highlands, in part because she had fewer colonies than her rival European powers.
ዝዝከረኒ ለኒ ጠያን ነይረ ምሳና ሓና ኣሽቱን ከለና ድማ ጠያን ዓለም ብምሉእ ጠያን ብነ ነብር ዓሊ ሰማይ ካልእ ንፈልጦ ይነበርና ማበሮ ኣካያዳና ምስኦም ጸሊምን ጻዕዳን ፈላለየ ስለ ዝነበረ ኣብተቡሽ ይኹን ብነበልዒ ይኹን ኣብተዘኾነ ይኹን ምሽኪዳ ኣፈላለያ ጻዕዳ ዝቐመጦሲ ጸሊም ኣይቕመጦን ኣባር መጽኻሲ ኣብተ ቦታ ሰደ ዘለዎ መጽኻ كسرتي تخليني كبدقي لك كم فينسترا بو جيرم بو ترمسكا هو تخيد أو دما زقبله اللب زقبله خفيكا بمقدح حاجات كتشت.
The Italians wanted to develop Eritrea not only with settlers, but also as a military base to use as a stepping stone to other East African countries. They expended considerable energy in setting up the country's infrastructure.
In total 35 يعرضون بنات بإثيوبيا وبريطانيا. أبو أنين يشتوي قليل يمدبلنا يشتوي قويز يبنون فرج كل مبر قويز ما يتعال كابو عسكري عسكري لهم طربوش بمنا طربوش أفيرهم دبوديتو بدنقله دبوديتو في حمنا دبوديتو عسكري لهم نايتوخسي تمهير مان مسام حراخ الواقع
During the 1930s, Italian fascism had shown itself to be less efficient in economic terms than its fascist allies. Here was the chance to prove its worth abroad. In 1935, Italy decided to colonize the Abyssinian region. In October of the same year, Italian troops invaded Ethiopia using Eritrea as a base. Although it wasn't obvious at the time, the Second World War had already started. Field Marshal Badoglio assembled a massive expeditionary force. Hundreds of thousands of men, tanks and planes, and large quantities of poison gas. Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia, well aware of his limited military resources, left the country for London. Askari tribesmen, excellent soldiers under Badoglio's command, were in the front line. The forces were unevenly matched, and in 6 months, Ethiopia was defeated.
Italiani e amici dell'Italia, al di là dei monti e al di là dei mari, ascoltate, il maresciallo Badoglio telegrafa oggi 5 maggio alle ore 16 alla testa delle truppe vittoriose sono entrato in Addis Abeba. Annuncio al popolo italiano e al mondo che la pace è ristabilita. Ma è strettamente necessario che io aggiunga che si tratta della nostra pace, della pace romana, che si esprime in questa semplice, irrevocabile, definitiva proposizione: l'Etiopia è italiana!
أنا أحمد بكير مسؤول لبلون سمعتي ويمكن يوم أنا 87 نقفيهم يوم 80 كمان البقات زمان سنة بيه تاسكو كتله وبانا تحارب تله تلنا وبانا نتحارب وتوم هربوا أنا أسوم سنة هذا سواتي
انتم عسكريين دعمكم ما عليكم مقصورة
أنا بديت من عسكري باشيكة شنباش بس
شنباش عندكم؟
أكو شنباش بس أكو نص ساعة لين ساعة نم عرفت كم عرفت نستلم هذا أنا سنة سلوم ترى حاجة هيك نقالي أيوة هذا تعالوا كنت ركب أطالع لا ولا أطالع وقت ركب قط وقال أنا وقت حساب سنة على أول سنة بألف 4000 وسيس وراه معناتها بدنا كله ديت ناسي فرق الناس يكون جونال على ديسبون هذا بنو
دبر تابور مساعد إلهم شعب تقدر باطليان قلتيه انتم اجركم مسبله درفتي اللي تقبطان مسبله سمعاه هذا ربعنا بدك الى حليف تملس عوالا الى شمباش تملس صنحوا تقبطان تضاربوا وثيام مسلم دكنا سخا يشتو ببديخا انت لوكا ترفت حجسي قرادو خبركاي وشبوت كبركاي عسر هلكاه قبركاي اي تخيت بدان لا اسكرنا يدلين انت وينك لا يتبسمي قتري بتمي شاهينا النا فلحي بين على ارمي بلوك لما يوم عوان خيط بدي صلي يعني كما دي صحفت لنا بدي صليع أذكرنا كله.
In 1941, Italy declared war and joined Nazi Germany in the Axis alliance. Military planning in Europe, far away from the highlands of East Africa, was to have a profound effect on the people of Eritrea. British and French forces began the task of overthrowing the Italian Empire in Africa. Once again, the Italians called on the Askas, who took up arms for the last time in a war that was not of their making.
Tonight, I speak to the Italian people. And I speak to you from London. We are at war. Now we are condemned to work each other's ruin. And we'll tear your African empire to shreds and tatters.
فرقة عسكر طليان كسلات يا كاب كسلا انجليز دي موا تمليسا نحن من حجر اللونا كام حجر حجي فرونتو يبلو طليان تليفون لو كاب من حجر نقول له هلو سبيكين انجليز بلو له اديو كوباتو اريتريا بانجليز كابو بزي مشيت ساعة 4 خون مرسين دبدبو نقط ببعث خاتو مش كتكوس ببعث انتو وراغتوه قعو خلون ترينا بومبا مسلم حجي لهم أنا جانو هاي بشوعات شمت تري سنسيل له ذك إريتريا إثيوبياني عطاو مصايب كنا مبر سنسيل له يبرال تو ورقة مانيفستين دحر أواجي زمنا ذو ورقة ذي تترخبه ريشان قبويله اليوم عندي رأي إثيوبيا لا لا
Haile Selassie, the King of Kings, in voluntary exile in London since 1935, returned to Ethiopia together with the British troops. The Anglo-French advance was rapid. By March, the Allies were approaching Keren with the aim of seizing the fortress that dominated the road to the capital, Asmara. Keren was one of the most impregnable defensive positions in the whole of East Africa, guarding the only access route to the capital and to the port of Massawa on the Red Sea. battle for Keren lasted 53 days, and both sides suffered heavy casualties. Eventually, the fortress capitulated on March 27th, and Asmara followed without further resistance. The British objective was the naval base of Massawa, 90 kilometers northeast of Asmara. The British needed to safeguard their convoys passing through the Red Sea en route to the Indian Ocean. On April 8, 1941, Massawa was occupied by Anglo-French troops. The Italians surrendered after sabotaging a large part of their navy. Since time immemorial, this city, founded by the Arabs and ruled by the Turks in the 16th century, was the destination of trading caravans from Abyssinia. Its fall brought the campaign in Eritrea to an end.
كريانو فقرنا في تعرفين كيش على كنوا ده أنا كنا فسلتي فقرتو كم سل متبلغو كم ديش كنا كلا في تعرف حرب يلينا بينا كنوا ده كلنا ده أمانة بي أما كل هذا شفاك هل كان هاتي بلا ديش جونا تعرفين كيش ده تسمع
أنا كان فليس درينا نزعتهم كتوزو كل عسكر كطاليان كده إنجليز خدوا نزعت وظيفهم عندهم كتجزيهم يبلنا تو مثلا جنات أليمو نتمم محضر طاليان ندجنا دجنوا طاليان كل زنا بوليسيا استاسيون بس هذا كل طاليان قالوا أخذ كتنا السرقة.
In Asmara's royal palace, the Italian colonial authorities handed over to the British, who had a League of Nations mandate. It was a strictly European ceremony. Deeply involved in other war areas, the British quickly reached agreement with the thousands of Italians resident in the new protectorate, leaving local administration and commerce in Italian hands. The leaders of the indigenous population were deeply disappointed, since they had believed firmly in the British promises of emancipation.
أنا بيجي كان بعالم وكان لسه كان زول فليتنا أنا بزع نفسي أنا كان إثيوبيا حجي ترنتشين كنت واقع أنكلم مستيان طرابلس مش كابزي مس أبزي من جم مس أمنيرم السم ترى كبس علمت مستيان تحوش أمريكا برسي بودي إلكتريا مستيان تحوسير أنا قصة عصبة إنجليزي أتولى جزء أبزي إحنا بوق خايف دحتين العلمي أنا خده هنديا مسيوم سودان مسيوم Senegal مسيوم فرنسا إنجليز بعينته هزمي مسيوم.
The British divided Eritrea into two parts, giving the lowlands to the Sudan and the highlands to Ethiopia, thus separating the Christian and Muslim communities. This action forced two members of the independence movement to protest to the League of Nations, the Christian leader Walde Ab Walde Mariam and the Muslim leader Ibrahim Sultan.
الذي نتابع كي ندبر عدنا خي نتفق إرتراح حنتو خينا تستلحق وإلى حديرو كوك حلا خيريو نعتمق إلى قناة فيها مالتيو سلزي مدحان إرترا لهم إيو تفات إرترا لهم إيو نعم نعو نحنا ملوء ناس إنك نسوى أيو قرب نسوى قالوا صادكم ملوء حبرة نسي توبيا سووا له ما كلام من كنت كيرنا عدنا الحلم.
إرترا معناها حدود مستعمرة إيطاليا السابقة المطالبة بالاستقرار، وإذا تعذر الاستقرار الوسائل الدولية. إرترا لا تقسم ولا تجزأ ولا تقدم لا إلى يمين ولا إلى شمال.
At the close of World War II, the question of Eritrea's future arose. The winning powers were unable to reach agreement. For the first time in Eritrea's history, a political debate took place. Most of the local press was in Italian, but small newspapers began to appear in the vernacular. The first political parties were set up. Some rapidly attracted thousands of militant members. Two major blocs were formed. One, predominantly Muslim, wanting independence. The other, backed by the Coptic Church and several Muslim leaders, favored unification with Ethiopia.
Ethiopia propaganda nata. بإمكان كتفلالينا بهيمانوت فتيناتنا أفلالي هيمانوت السلام رابط أزبل زلو مستم أعراب حويسم نعنا كي ودقونا حدقا أمريكنا خاتو كفلاليونا يلوم يزقبر زلو يلوم بروباغاندا يقولون سلازي إتي نجر جنتا بوليتيكا نسايا محبر رابطان محبر إريتريا يعني إريتراويان في اللي عين برم
إريتراويان زستسقطوا بحكي هايله سلاسي برتو بونيو نيرو سلطان نيرو أرديون حبرات المستات أمريكاني قالوا فدراسيون لا من طير ولا حد طير ولا نحن ولا إريتراويان كن بعلاتهم حبرات المستات تقيمنا نسيت.
A great day for Emperor Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia, for the Empress, their family, and for all their people. For the occasion ratified the Act of Federation of Eritrea with Ethiopia. Eritrea, formerly an Italian colony, had been governed by a British administration for over 10 years. But now, in accordance with the United Nations resolution of 1950, the maritime province became a part of the Emperor's territory. The scene in his capital, Addis Ababa, was quiet and dignified as the ceremony was completed and made known to the people. The transfer was indeed a triumph for a land that had suffered much tribulation in the past.
They have their own methods of crowd control. But it was, in fact, all quiet in Asmara as Mr. Cumming, British Chief Administrator, took up his position. The ceremony marked the handing over of Eritrea to Ethiopia, with the band of the 1st Battalion, the Southwest Borderers, playing their part. The hauling down of the Union flag marked the end of some 11 years of British responsibility for the administration of the country.
مستوهونا أنا خدت منفصل كم تصحفونا كذا كل سلطان إثيوبيا بحرين إيدهم دوغانا إيدهم telecommunication إيدهم.
The Emperor and Empress of Ethiopia have made their first state visit to the newly federated territory of Eritrea, once an Italian colony. Haile Selassie I cut the dividing ribbon and unveiled a memorial plaque marking the occasion. Even if the Ethiopian troops didn't quite conform to Western standards, it was nevertheless a great occasion. As the date to enter Eritrea, the Emperor had chosen the anniversary of the outbreak of the 1936 war with Italy.
ودي أرسلان مسح بقلص كوجيرو مني بقلص سكبروا سمروا كل سليم
زي كم مجمريو ديمقراسين مسل ود سبن زحلون يرو أنت زخود ديمقراسين مسل ود سبن زحلون يرو أنت زخود تفدرشين هاي مفرسة النيرة بدي حرف فريش الفدرشين كأني ناهيز بديليات تحاتيتو እቲ ህዝቢ ድልየቱ በገለጸ ነው ተኾነ ግን ናብዚ ኩሉ ከይበጽሕ በኃይሊ ገዛእቲ ተዓምፂፁ ፌደሬሽን አፍሪሶ ኣብ ኢዶም እትዮማ ስጋቢ ሓደ ሓደ ኣብየ ዝብል ተተረኽበው መሬት ደኣምበር ህዝቢ ኣየድልየናኒ ዝብል ቃል ሃይለ ስላሴ ምስተዘንዘረ እቲ ህዝቢ ግደ ስደትን إذا من واصل كوينو
Pourquoi l'ONU n'a rien dit malgré les nombreuses demandes d'intervention?
il y a toujours des explications à toutes les bêtises. Et dans cette affaire, l'ONU est partie à faux, avec un préjugé favorable pour l'Éthiopie. Mais il faut comprendre que l'Éthiopie, c'est d'abord le pays le plus important de la région, de la Corne de l'Afrique. Son chef d'État, c'est l'empereur HAILE Selassie. Alors, ça ne nous dit plus grand-chose maintenant, mais c'était le chef pratiquement du seul pays africain indépendant. C'est, comme on disait à l'époque, la première victime du fascisme, puisque l'Éthiopie a été conquise par l'Italie de Mussolini juste avant la dernière guerre mondiale, que HAILE Selassie, l'empereur donc d'Éthiopie, et pour les dirigeants de cette époque, c'est un compagnon de Londres. Il était avec Churchill, avec Roosevelt, avec De Gaulle, à lutter aux côtés des Alliés. Donc, dans la conscience occidentale et universelle, tout le monde a l'impression qu'on doit quelque chose à l'Éthiopie. Et puis en plus, vous avez des experts qui interviennent et qui disent « Ah, l'Éthiopie, c'est un grand pays, il n'a pas d'accès à la mer ». Alors, si on fusionnait plus ou moins l'Éthiopie et l'Érythrée, ça ferait quelque chose d'équilibré. Et puis, l'Érythrée, c'est très pauvre, il y a très peu d'habitants, mais c'est toute la côte, vous voyez, le long de la mer Rouge. Ah ben alors, ce serait complémentaire. Je vous dis, sur le papier, tout ça, entre experts, ça va très bien. Il n'y a qu'un ennui, c'est qu'on n'a pas demandé l'avis de la population de l'Érythrée.
In 1961, armed resistance to annexation began in the western hills of the country. The first leader of this resistance movement was a highly respected ex-brigand, Hannes Idris Awati. At the outset, only a few belonged to the Eritrea Liberation Front, ELF. Those we have met were active members. Today, most of their companions are dead.
طيب عمنا عمر دامر ممكن توصف لنا
المعركة دي طبعا احنا كان عددنا 28 نفر. المعركة دي طبعا احنا كان كونا على 3 أصناف ومقيدين كده قالوا لنا جاي العدو. طبعا في عندنا بنادق ب5 عتيقة ومعها ب10 واحدة محامل. الباقي كله بنادق ب5 و6. والجبخان بتاعته ميتة بنطلعها ونعمل فيها كبريتة دي من ورا. واحد عشان يضرب طلقة. فعلا نحن لما جايين دبان من فوق قال يا اخوانا جايين العدو جاي. انا استعدينا، انا كنت في الامام انا كنت قائد وسيم مجموعه، كنت قالوا لنا عدو جاي. في الاخر خلاص انا مسكنا الساتر، بعدها ضربت طلقتين، الطلقه الثانيه سكتت في الماسوره. ابد تطلع من الياسين.
والله الشعب الإريتري أول مرة 61 و 62 كان في الكوف. من 63 انتم بجانب الصوت بأكل مواصلات مخابرات كان معنا وحتى كان توعية شديدة. احنا بالليل نوعي الشعب من أنا نطلع الجبال، كان ما عندنا سلاح، فالشعب من كثرة المرور أصبح وقف معنا وحارب الحكومة.
حقيقة أول مرة الشعب طالما كان موجود حامد كان متقبلنا بحامد ذاته، مش نحن بالنسبة لنا. الشعب لأنه كانوا بيؤمنوا بحامد يعني. ما في شك كان يدير يعني. مرة ذاته لما حصل مشاكل كده يعني شدة ما كان يقول نحن ما طلعنا دلوقتي عشان ننهب ونسور رقاب زي زمان. قالوا نحن طلعنا من أجل إريتريا. إذا كان الناس ما موافقين بالناس العسكريين اللي جونا ده أرض السلاح قالوا وطردهم بعض الناس كده. لأنهم قالوا طبعا الناس جداد جو وانت سلمتهم المسؤولية ونحن كنا في المسؤولية وكنا معاك. قالوا انتم ما تقدروا تراقبوا بالنظارة ولا تقدروا توجهوا. قالوا الناس دي لما جو أنا طلعت من أجلهم.
After the Italian surrender, Eritreans gained the right to higher education. Asmara quickly filled with thousands of young people whose ambition was to study. This generation came of age in the early 60s, a time when the prospect of liberation was much in the air. One of these students, Isaiah Afewerki, is now the first president of independent Eritrea.
This town, in our standards, was a melting pot. People coming from everywhere and developing the sense of oneness. I discovered many of my friends came from a certain region or were from an ethnic group different I even never knew that there were ethnic or national groups. I mean, general things, you know, but you don't know these things until you come to the ELF, where it becomes part of the daily life of everyone. The good thing was in this town, I mean, and that I think did contribute to the long struggle of the people in this country. I mean, as a melting pot, where everyone from every direction was coming, developing that sense of nationalism, of being one, of having common interests.
At Addis Ababa University, left-wing students demonstrated against the emperor and his all-powerful ally, the United States. The protest was immediately put down.
Quand j'étais ici à Asmara pour les études secondaires, on faisait chaque année des manifestations contre la présence du gouvernement éthiopien, de la présence militaire et administrative. Donc ça a commencé en 1900. Je dirais 1961-62. J'étais pris à Addis, j'étais interrogé pendant un mois, et un mois d'interrogation qui consiste de torture chaque soir, chaque nuit, pour que je dévoile le nom qui faisait dans ma cellule. On s'est organisé par cellule. Et donc, on était des groupes de 7, et chaque groupe de 7 créait d'autres cellules de 7. Comme ça étend pour plusieurs milliers de personnes.
Quand tu parles de torture, c'était quelle sorte de torture?
Mais on nous met dans l'eau, hein, ils nous frappaient sur les bas de pieds ici, plein de pieds, ils passaient de barres par ici pour tourner les bas des pieds vers le haut et ils nous frappent fort. C'était dur. Donc, c'était très très dur. On a fait un appel, toutes les familles étaient mobilisées. D'après ce qu'il dit mes parents, mon frère Saïe, qui était médecin à Gondar, il a vendu sa voiture, il a envoyé de l'argent à ma famille, à mon père, et mon père a littéralement payé pour réduire le jugement de 5 ans à 8 mois.
The Eritrea Liberation Front began amongst the Amer people, nomadic tribes on the western plains. By the late 60s, the ELF had grown considerably. Many highlanders, mainly Christian, joined the guerrilla movement. But there was little understanding between the educated young people from the city and the veterans of the Amer tribes. An ideological split was inevitable, and a second front was formed, the Eritrea Popular Liberation Front, EPLF. The ELF's attempt to eliminate this second front led to civil war, in which over 1,500 lives were lost.
Those who split were putting themselves as democratic alternative for ELF. And also there was a hypothesis which says that the objective conditions of Eritrean society doesn't accept more than one organization in the battlefield. Really, it is there is no ideological difference.
So,
as someone say.
The differences between the two fronts were neither religious nor political. So why did you split?
Personal ambitions were included also. And we couldn't find ways with which we can solve these problems, you see. But finally, it developed to fighting and so on. When fighting comes, these contradictions will be deepened and more and more.
So how did you decide and how did you form EPLF?
I think it was very spontaneous. No one had the idea of creating this front. It in fact came lately, after the split within the ELF. The ELF as an organization, as I said, was not the best place to commit oneself into, especially, as I said, people who had their vision about the future of Eritrea. To find an organization that simply represents very primitive political attitudes was not acceptable. The attempt to find a solution from within did not work. because repression after repression, elimination of people within the organization was so abhorrent that it was difficult to even survive within that organization. You would flee from your unit, you would flee from your place and hide somewhere. I remember until the early 70s, the more repression, the more of coercive means of resolving the differences that were there led to the creation of the PLF. PLF survived because it was an egalitarian organization. That sort of organization is vital, has been very vital in our experience. It could have not been done otherwise.
Did you regret to have been some kind of a Marxist at that time?
No.
But are you still?
No.
Good. At
Yes.
that time, good now.
I have always said it's always very natural to be young. And it's very natural to have your own, ways of thinking when you are young, unless one hypocritically tries to condemn his past, condemn himself as a human being. I never regret that, and I'm not a Marxist now, and I don't worry about whether I have been a Marxist or not in the past.
The Ethiopian armed forces took strong action in the war against the Eritrean freedom fighters, a clear case of what would later be called black colonialism. However, in spite of Western aid, they suffered several humiliating defeats and were unable to suppress the rebellion. In the winter of 1973, the emperor managed to conceal the results of a disastrous famine that killed 20,000 people. These tragic events hastened the downfall of Haile Selassie. In the spring of 1974, revolution broke out in Ethiopia. People living outside the towns took up arms. In Addis Ababa, demonstrators protested daily against the regime. The poorly paid army turned against the emperor. A 1,000-year empire had come full circle. Haile Selassie, the old lion, was deposed and imprisoned. When he left his Jubilee court in a small blue army Volkswagen, this Christian monarch carried with him 58 years of absolute rule and the end of a dynasty. He died in prison a few months later, smothered by his jailers. The Ethiopian revolution produced a new power structure, the Derg, a progressive regime that buried Haile Selassie's feudalism and allowed the Eritrean resistance movement to hope for a settlement of the conflict. The Provisional Military Council was dominated by the left-wing ideology of Colonel Mengistu, known as the Red Negus. He sought the support of the Soviet Union, but was first and foremost a fervent Ethiopian nationalist, determined to succeed where Haile Selassie had failed, subdue the rebellion in Eritrea. During this period, the younger generation in Eritrea
صحيح خمسة حجي مزيو كلا يرسو قرص قرشان بس هنا خمسة يلام كيدو باقي خمسة دهري مهرتو ببرخة غيرو عدس هوا.
To join the field, it wasn't easy to join the field from Addis, to go directly to the field.
1,000 kilometers.
Yeah, so I had to walk from Addis to a place called Baharbal.
You knew about the life in the fields before?
I can say I was at least psychologically prepared. I can see what will happen in the field. I know there will be there will be, I know I can't find enough food to eat there, so hunger may be there, as well as death will be there, because I know in the field there is war, and where there is war, there is death. So I was prepared for that. I had to go to Sahel to have my military training, and then I joined the artillery section. At that time, we didn't have tanks or the modern weapons. What we had was what we call the B-10, Doshka, Browning machine gun. All these weapons were kept from the enemy.
All of them?
All of them.
كله أبوهم سبعة عم يشتغلوا كلهم المثال لا قال ما عمرتها سمعنا هنا المسجد دار عنا يا أخي كذا يلنا بقى نعمل خيدا يسألنا يحشبروا لهم فقدات القيام قتلنا محرزهم تورثروا زي لو تسقاي بحال ود مقالين هلو سوي ديوان هذا من سك سمسم يمدرو شنو كذا يبحال نكون نقول كذي
ميدافت جزيتي حماق نيرو بدرجي بزحد دق انستيو أبلاشين يقتلون فقد ترجع دربيون مع سرتي قال ميدا سلازنا تعد حشت أب ميدا خيتك كافت إنك تعيش بزبل لميدا وزي
شو دائما
أسوش تشتاق شو أعتقد
نمنتاي كاب أبزوزي أتوم زقتلوان زبالاشوان تخيل مسحواتات موتي
Le colonel Mengistu prend le pouvoir à Addis Abeba et il établit, je le dis, une dictature parmi les plus épouvantables qu'ait connu ce malheureux continent. Il y avait notamment des commandos d'assassinat qui portaient un nom tout à fait impressionnant. On les appelait les groupes d'étouffement. Et ils étaient chargés spécialement d'étrangler les jeunes qui parlaient. Le pouvoir avait considéré ce qui était dangereux, c'est que si les lycéens, les étudiants, c'est-à-dire les classes montantes et un peu élaborées, vous voyez, un peu une élite responsable, intellectuelle, commençaient à manifester des velléités d'indépendance nationale ou d'espoir de démocratie. Et donc il y avait des commandos qui intervenaient quand on leur a dit « Tiens, tel jeune homme parle, proteste, n'a pas bon esprit ». Et il les étouffait avec un fil de fer qu'on serrait autour de la gorge avec une pince. Et le mot étouffement avait donc un double sens assez dramatique, littéralement, qui était qu'on étouffait physiquement, mais il s'agissait aussi d'étouffer la parole.
During the summer of 1977, Colonel Mengistu's government organized a people's militia, supported by regular army units, in order to halt the advance of the Eritrean freedom fighters. EPLF forces defeated the Ethiopians, and on July 8th, after only 5 days fighting, took the town of Keren.
By 1977, the whole Eritrean countryside and the most important cities were under the control of the liberation movement, except Asmara and the seacoast around Massawa. I mean, we were more or less on the verge of liberating the land.
As a movement, you now control most of Eritrea, including several important towns and cities. What's stopping you now from declaring your independence?
Well, we say we have our independent administrative system within the liberated areas. Declaring independence, of course, when you have Asmara still under the control of the enemy,
and you don't have the international support of many member nations of the UN, it's very difficult to declare independence. Politically, it doesn't have any meaning.
Well, do you see your independence approaching fast?
Of course, militarily we can resolve the issue, but politically, in the international field, we have to do a lot of diplomatic work to win the support of the UN and all member nations of the UN.
Well, how much support is there actually in the outside world for an independent Eritrea?
Well, it's very difficult to say. Political stance change all the time. Sometimes people are against your just cause, and sometimes they change their position and side with you. It's very difficult to judge with this political changes, tremendously changing within short periods of time.
Backed by the Soviet Union, Mengistu promised to wipe out the Eritrean rebels and planned a series of offensives. At a parade of his troops, he dramatically shattered a bottle of red ink and made them swear, win or die.
Qu'est-ce qui a guidé les Soviétiques à faire un si brusque changement d'alliance dans cette région qui a amené tant de guerres? Qu'est-ce qui les a amenés à s'enticher de Mengistu?
D'abord, le changement a été sur le terrain d'une extraordinaire brutalité, puisque pratiquement en 48 heures, 3000 conseillers soviétiques ont changé de camp. Et pourquoi est-ce que les soviétiques ont changé comme ça brutalement d'alliés? Parce que ce sont des joueurs d'échecs. Et que tout ceci, la politique internationale, les Anglais appellent ça le grand jeu, et c'est bien évidemment le modèle du jeu d'échecs. Pour quelqu'un qui ne sait pas jouer aux échecs, vous savez, il voit un échiquier, c'est 64 cases, elles ont l'air toutes pareilles. C'est vrai qu'elles ont la même dimension. Mais pour un joueur d'échecs, elles n'ont pas la même valeur. Et les cases du centre valent beaucoup plus en termes de stratégie que les cases qui sont sur le côté. Les cases du centre valent un sacrifice de pions et parfois de pièces, parce qu'elles contrôlent les autres cases. Alors dans cette corne de l'Afrique, dans ce grand jeu Est-Ouest, la case du milieu, importante, traditionnelle, l'Empire d'Éthiopie, peuplé, puissant, avec des structures d'État, avec une armée, c'était les Américains et leurs alliés. Et les Soviétiques jouent ce qu'ils ont, c'est-à-dire les cases de flanc. La Somalie, du général Siad Barre, il y a maintenant, au centre du dispositif, un pouvoir favorable à l'Union soviétique. Le jeu a complètement changé. Assez dramatique pour les combattants sur le terrain.
In December 1977, the EPLF attacked Massawa, managing to occupy part of the town, while the Ethiopians still held the port area. Bitter fighting, much of it hand-to-hand, took place. Soviet Navy destroyers tipped the balance and enabled the Ethiopians to repel the attack. It was a serious defeat for the EPLF, with heavy loss of life in one of the war's bloodiest battles.
The intervention of the Soviet Union came early, in 1978, and as you can understand, the Soviet Union was more than willing to support the Ethiopian government with whatever means to change the balance of force. So the initial support which they give to the Ethiopian government was about 3 billion of military hardware. They were fast in rebuilding this armed force. And by 1978, they were able to mobilize about 100,000. So with this coordinated attack against the Eritrean force, they were able to push the front back to the northern part of Eritrea. The EPLF decided to withdraw to the northern part of Eritrea around Nakfa. This was the front which was established in 1978. We call this the strategic withdrawal because this changed everything. The balance of force was in favor of the Soviet Union. By now we have modern artillery, modern aircraft, and given this situation, it was not possible for the front to continue conventional way, which we were doing back in 1977 and 78. And the decision was to withdraw to the northern part of Eritrea, to the mountain areas, and start playing the game in a more smart way by digging trenches along the mountain edges. This was helpful in many ways. The terrain was more suitable for the tanks, and to have trenches in many ways can save life from artillery pieces of the Ethiopian government.
Not far from Asmara in the Amazian province lies the village of Zager. Stronghold of the EPLF up to 1978, situated on the front line before the strategic withdrawal, Zager is a historical site. Farmers here grow cereals, such as millet and dura.
دحر مزلقنا هزباو جنبار وتهدرات إثيوبيا مسميزو بخميت تنبرو نيركم.
إثيوبيا وساتوت سوكي نزخات نيرو بعدي هزباو جنبار. إثيوبيا زغول عدس جاتو لينا خمس جينا. كنت ما بزعلي دايما خمس عدس كلا. سما بزمع دولارينا. فهم دارت زمع دون السمش جمود فوا بعدي. بس هذا بحر لينا. أنا حبي تفقدنا ناتو. أبو تفقدنا ولد. سوم نجارجل سرح.
أنتوا دكتوركم متى وان كدوم؟ ما أصحى
أنا عمل عملت مني أنا كله فالأسرار شو من تنقل هذا غير مني أتخيل أسرت تغيروا أسرت تغيروا أجي
مسجد لي بخميت تحبابرون يركون
زعما كله زعما عيوهن الله أخون التوجد مسابقون مسعنت مسعناناهم مسعنانا يوت فينا هنا بقولنا فيها وت فيها وتقول كتاب وت فيها وتجمع بين تقدرتي
أجي إثيوبيا أبزو خلوه انتي تقم مقاطبتهم نير
بقاطبهم ده حتوقون سوم بديتاك مسيك النير كنا متاسف حيلهم ها أبزو يقفنا بعد درام بلوكسناني
بسان كزما ربعت تنسيفة دقس نير نقزا خوضفن كندي وردت كندي مكرة كندي نبرت ندات أخاف قزا قعزي ألقسي اندالني أي قعزني له ريساي كابزا غزاي بلنيري
انت قبرو تغزاي
صفو طرق اتو طرق عنو اي كيدني يلي تنبراو غزاي يخيد نمع ورقه لطيفهم بصحني كوي اتو تغزا ورقه لطفو ورقه دربيه افحوتي غزاي كوفو نمنتا يبلو ننعت اسريلهم كندي ጭንቅ كندي مكر حليفين
سلا دقافعنا حرقوا ربابت ديالبا بين يتصنح مجنا بغزا واسق
كميجا كنت تحلال وانا
فلات افت عند حدا غصو خمص كلت حدا اتي وتساي وتهدر حنت فات مص كم حاوت من مسيلا كما يكل من مسيلا نعا اخي قفعت مص تبربيتا
The freedom fighters were versatile and well organized, building roads and making weapons with material stolen from the enemy. Such activities made them expert artisans. Following the model of the Viet Cong guerrilla organization, they lived in dugouts and fought during the hours of darkness. Command posts, hospitals, and fuel dumps were all below ground in order to avoid enemy air attacks. Financial support for the EPLF came from Eritreans living abroad.
Our hospital or the health facility we had then was early 1975 was very poor, and everybody has to do whatever possible, whatever he finds, he encounters. If he is in the field, in the front, he has to manage war injuries, and as well as medical patients who come to him. They may be diabetics or malaria problem or Kalazar problem or what have you. There were a lot of barefoot doctors, more than 2,000 barefoot doctors were trained there. Of course, the training is continuous because the War of Liberation demands some go and some continue. So we train a lot of barefoot doctors and battalion doctors too, plus anesthetists, pharmacy technicians.
ኣብቲ እዋን ሰውራ ዝመፀ ለውጥታት ንኩሎም ዞም ተቐስና ረዋሕታት ናይ መሬት ምውናን መሰላት ተረጋግፁ ኣብ ህዝባዊ ስልጣናት ናይ ምስታፍ መሰላት ተረጋግፁ ኣብ ትምህርቲ ናይ ምስታፍ ኣብ ዝተፈላለዩ ስራሕን ብጾታ ኣድልዎ ከይተገብረላ ክትሳተፈሉ ትኽእል ባይታ ተፈጢሩ ከም ዝረኣናውን ኣብ ክሳብ ብረታዊ ቃልሲ ተዋጋእትን ኣዋጋእትን ኮይነን ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ክሳተፋ ክኢለን
Do you think it was good to have women fighters?
طبعا كله نحن قلنا دائما قبل إذا ما قلت إنه الوضع اللي كان عندنا عاش الاستعمار اللي كانت عندنا العدو هجم البلاد وأباح العروض الأعراض وهتك الأعراض وقتل ونهب وسلب. في الحالة دي إذا لم نقم كلنا ذكرنا وناسنا مع بعض بيد واحدة مع كثرة الهائلة للعدو ما كنا نتغلب عليه إلا نقوم كلنا لازم.
ساعتين تقادلانيا أما أنا كم وجدت وقتها تقادلانيا مثلا أي ثرفني ساعتين لومي 3 عامات سبقوت قيدا برات حزان تقاريسان بما عدن أتيانين إذن مثلا أي ثرفني ساعتين كما أنا تفكر قيدا مثلا قبل أي.
The situation within the resistance movement became a little clearer. After 10 years of rivalry, the original ELF movement was attacked and driven towards the Sudan. Some of the units joined the EPLF, others remained independent. But the EPLF was by now the only significant liberation movement in Eritrea.
The biggest offensive we had was 1982. Where they deployed about 3 times to 5 times of the Ethiopian armed force, all modern equipments.
I was in the front lines. What makes different the 6th offensive is that the Derg made a vast campaign on this offensive specifically. He named it the Red Star Operation. So he did a very vast and worldwide campaign. So it was even my first time to see the airplanes bombarding during the night. So the 6th offensive, we were even expecting the enemy to use the gas, the condemned gas. So we had to prepare our masks. We had to dig trenches. So early in the morning at 5 o'clock, the bombardment started. So you know this Stalin 40 barrels artillery. After this Stalin organs, they started bombarding the trench early in the morning, which makes it 5 times 40. It goes up to 100 barrels shooting at a time. So, as I told you, it was purposely done in a very narrow space. When the sun started rising, they came on foot. The bombardment was totally stopped, and they started climbing the mountain where I was. It's then that they realized we are alive. They started climbing, and the battle that morning started with the hand grenades. And the army was left there all day.
When you're fighting a giant, you definitely would take your time, find the best position, and attack. For us then, after defeating the Ethiopian army in that operation, we did learn a lot. I wouldn't think anything like that would happen anywhere. I mean, we were unequals to a degree where there is no comparison anywhere. We did the job. It is a very intricate thing to explain now, but we were successful in doing it, to our surprise sometimes, maybe. But later on, I think anything that happened was simple. I mean, you would fight a battle and say, well, this is the worst. And you will see another one, it becomes the worst. But I don't think there is any comparison to that battle. After that, everyone was confident. We have overcome this difficulty, we have fought this battle, we have won the war, not the battle, I mean, we have won the war. And the things that follow will be simply technical matters involved. When, how to attack, to finalize the process.
Another scourge devastated the country. In 1984, war and drought combined to provoke a vast famine in northern Ethiopia and Eritrea. 200,000 people died, and refugees by the thousand poured into camps in the Sudan. The whole world was moved to take action. One unexpected result was that through the organization of food supplies, the EPLF emerged from its international isolation.
People may have been dying of hunger here in the highlands, but there in the field, there wasn't almost a big difference. As a whole, the responsibility of the whole country, of the whole society, of the whole population was there. As for the daily life, usually we used to buy these crops from the Sudan. Of course, you may be eating, but in the meantime, you suffer because, you know, people are dying of hunger somewhere else in Eritrea.
On the battlefield, the EPLF gained the advantage in heavy fighting involving thousands of men. In 1984, on the northeastern front, freedom fighters overran Ethiopian forces and reached the Red Sea.
Breakthrough came in 1988, where we were able to destroy the center or the core of the Ethiopian armed force around Af-Abad. The Ethiopians, they had about 20,000 around Af-Abad. We were around 11,000. So once we destroyed this bottleneck, I think it was that much easy to force the enemy to protect Massawa, Asmara, Karen. You have to understand that the force which was lost by the Ethiopians in Af-Abad was one of the most advanced section of the Ethiopian armed force.
محمد علي دي نعفر ايوه محمد علي نعفر تشال وفاطمه دي حلحله تشال عمر دي حلحل عقبتك ايوه هذا هلا عمر هلا انا شعبيه من دبل شعب ربنا بدل يا توبه وربنا قناتي بلايا لعدوها المقاتلين انت موجود اسمك كذي شعبكم سلت فاسه يترف كل حوطه يترف لهم بس ولا عاد اللي قاعد مطوم انسان تلعب الطوره انسوا منك انسوا سبح الربيكون وسبع فاحل.
So the next move was to show the Ethiopians that we are going to Karen, but in real terms we are going to Massawa. As you can see from this trench, it seems much more easier to go to Karen or this part between Karen and Asmara. But actually, we went to Massawa, which was not in their expectations. Massawa was, I think, one of our major engagements against the Ethiopian Armed Force, not only because of the armed force they had on land in sea, but against the Ethiopian Air Force too. For every one tank of the EPLF, the Ethiopians had 5 to 6. For every artillery, they had 4. If you add this to, if you add the Air Force combat value to this ground combat value, that means we were in the ratio of 1 to 7, 1 to 8.
In Alphabet, the Eritreans seized a vast amount of enemy supplies, including tanks, trucks, and rocket launchers. The EPLF set up an armored unit and deployed a well-equipped army in the attack on Massawa a few months later. This time, there weren't any Russian ships to protect the Ethiopians. In Moscow, Gorbachev had taken Brezhnev's place. The fall of Massawa was a heavy defeat for the Ethiopians. 8 brigades lost, 80 tanks captured or destroyed, 2 MiG fighters shot down, 9 ships sunk. Ethiopia no longer had any naval vessels. The EPLF captured 8,000 prisoners. Mengistu had preserved the monument to HAILE Selassie in order to emphasize Ethiopian domination of this ancient town. Freedom fighters tore down the old symbols. Two years after the siege, Massawa still showed traces of its suffering. On the outskirts of the devastated town, a family entirely made up of women was living in an abandoned Ethiopian outpost. After their men were killed, the women were caught up in the flood of 500,000 refugees pouring into Sudanese camps. When they returned, their home and all their possessions had been destroyed.
معنا تنقص على سلسلة تتحفظ اللجان ساعة ساعتين والتسوال على ساعة ساعتين
تقيتي قال كنت ستة مع سوتيها أو تصاصها ثمانية
كبا ساعتها نشعب بركباي ساعة شعات هو شعب بركبايا لمينا يا أبياتنا تخيل عديك وقتي أي من لسني
ومحواتي هي وهجري لا غيره دحريو خلاص هي يرحمني عام كم تحوى مستحوى تنجيبه بزوره زوجة ثلاثة
وميت سمعكم حكاية زيادة
كما يسمع إن بخيو حزينة وتريفي تاجل
قال سي قال كل كريستيان تمري عن الزيادة بدي أمنا خميت سمعوا كده
صحان حواد الفرياء وقع زي مثل
إذا كل استخف لما سواتي من هذه تاريخي بزول حاوت يقبوا ودو كميت يقمقموا
بقى هاي هنا سوقنا لنا وقعت عد تاريخي
أمارا
بقى فأنا يقبوا أي بالمهنة ثم سواتي تجي كفلني روح أعز سب ساح جهان قتال أطلق قتال مستقر فنير وما تأني يقبوا أيه تسب كن تدري سوا ويكن زي ما سوات تدري فركع قتال سقيات موردات تسب كسلام يرخبون كأوز وزحها أم تخفله
نحن قال سنة ثلاث عام يقبأنا وين نأنتي هجرنا دكنا تسويون أنت هجرنا كرفحنا براء حليفنا بسدة أنت هجرنا معت تاشمو سببارينا من هذا الديت الدماني دكان صخدو حدا زي باللمز حجزانسي تصقي عن تحتي انتاي شمون صدر عن كوينان كرفحنا براء بزح كنسوا كندكم كنقالس ناس لزخوني تجد ما الصوم تسويون وفعت عدنا رفنا وكامري وفعت الصوم تسويون بيت واتسحنا هذا قعون معهم
Da 9 figli non ho nessuno. Vedendo me stesso dentro, pensando, è una cosa da non tenere in piedi, ma quando ho trovato la mia libertà e la libertà che io mi vedevo ancora adesso come un sogno, la libertà del mio paese mi fa dimenticare tutto il mio dolore. Io sono contento, orgoglioso e che morti i miei figli per loro patria, io adesso cammino con la testa alta, che non ho nessuna paura e terrorismo passato. Prima avevo un altro nome, invece adesso c'è nome mio preciso, eritreo, uomo come tutto il mondo.
Per lei la patria è un valore.
È un valore che non ha limiti.
Angered and humiliated by the success of the Eritrean front, Mengistu ordered his MiG-21s and MiG-23s to bomb Massawa a week after its capture. The target was the civilian population. Further reprisals were to follow.
ربع معك تخيل ما مشيت دلي أنا عند زمدي كيت تبن سقع ذان الزارب الله يطلحتن من سئلة سوسة سبحان الله بشم حديث مستقبلي والحوي مسودة من الساف كونوش تموت ساعة شدشتي حمل فلوس رأيي شكري وردنا من ما خلك خندي حزبي زي تسمع الدمፅ زي بالله ربنا على من سئلة دمسس أبلا تتخيل الذي سب بدحريقو يخيجي هو نو أبزا غزانيري نداغو يخو خيجي دحرت غدالا بزا يمانيتي إيدي حيزو نقالاي كأكو مستدفو حزني يمصعني بدحريقو بعد غزانا يمص بتري إذا أنت أشومو غيره
From the casualties that we see here, there are burn case, napalm. There was a cluster bomb which explodes in the air and which has an extensive blast which covers a wide area, and there was a damage of buildings and all sorts of things around it. There is for sure a cluster bomb because we haven't seen it before. He wanted to terrorize the population too, that there was no air raid in Massawa at all. The people do not know air raid. And he wants to make them, he wants to shock them. While at Massawa there was, this bombardment was so brutal that the world have already witnessed it through the videos and so on. Yeah, well, I cannot feel anything worse than the rest of the human can think of, because it's barbaric, total barbaric. The targets are the civilians, not the military will be the targets for the Ethiopian government, the APLF troops, rather than the civilians.
In the spring, the offensive began again. The capital, Asmara, was liberated on May 24th, 1991, after a few brief skirmishes. The EPLF accepted the surrender of the Ethiopian Second Revolutionary Army. 80,000 men laid down their weapons and returned to their homeland. Isaiah Afewerki set up a provisional government and announced a referendum to be held within 2 years. At the same time, in Addis Ababa, the regime of the Red Niggers was collapsing, overcome in the north by the Eritrea Popular Liberation Front, and in Ethiopia by an armed opposition led by rebels from the Tigray region. Mengistu fled. It was May 28, 1991.
Est-ce que cette liberté retrouvée ne va pas se transformer en illusion s'il n'y a pas d'autonomie économique dans le pays? Comment faire pour ne pas se retrouver l'otage des puissances qui ne vont pas manquer de vouloir vous aider? C'est un problème qu'ont eu beaucoup de pays d'Afrique. Comment faire?
Oui, c'est dur. Le seul espoir qu'on a, c'est qu'on n'a pas fait le même, on n'a pas parcouru le même chemin que les autres pays africains. Le FPLA qui nous a amenés vers cette liberté,
a réussi contre tout, si tu veux, les puissances mondiales, hein, les Américains, les Européens, qui aidaient massivement économiquement les Éthiopiens, les Soviétiques qui fournissaient des armements. Donc j'espère qu'ils seront aussi cette spécificité érythréenne à nous conduire à une liberté économique. Je sais bien que c'est très très difficile, mais c'est le combat qu'il faut mener.
ሰብ ኮ ዝቁፀር ዓዲ ምስ ሓዘ እዩ ዓዲ ዘይብሎ ሰብ እዩ ሕጂ ግና ዓድና ሒዝና ብሕልፊ ሎም ንግሆ መበል 182 ኮይና ኢለውና ኣብ ኒውዮርክ ሰቂላ ባንዴራ ናይ ኤርትራ ኢለውና
May I take it that the General Assembly accepts the recommendation of the Security Council and adopts draft resolution A/47/L61 by acclamation. It is so decided.
ክቡር ጌርካ ከዓ ምፍላጡን ብጥንቃቁን መሓዙን የድሊ
ግን ናይ ግድነት ክፍል
ግዲ እትፈትዎ እኮ ትፈትዎ ሂብካ ከተምፅእ ስለዝፈትናዮ 40-50 ሺሕ ደቂ ታቦትና ሰንኪሎም ሞይቶም ግድን ሃገር ስለ ብምዃኑ እምበር ምጥን ንእሽተይ ነገር ኣይኮነ
ናጽነት ዝዳል ወላ ዓመት ክልተ ዓመት ብዘይ ብልዕን ይገብርና ክልተ ደቀይ ተሰውዮም ዶም እንቋዕታ ባንዴራ ምስኡን በሪ ሰላም